Well, hi everyone, Bob Harris here. Welcome to the RTI Knowledge Center. In this segment, how brakes impact handling is what we're going to be talking about today. Two parts of this segment. We're going to talk about the brake adjuster and how it works for the driver. That's one of the only things that he really has that he can adjust in the car when he gets onto the racetrack. And trail braking, how that works and helps your suspension keep loaded and help the car be smoother. One of the things, first of all, we're going to talk about setting up your pedal adjuster or your brake adjuster so that the maximum rounds of adjustment are front to rear. It's very important, and these come with this trick little nut right here on these pedals. Well, take that off, throw it away. It's not something that's needed. When you get your pedal adjuster, your brake adjuster screwed onto the pedal, make sure that you put some Loctite on that, or put a jam nut on the other side. If you're using the AFCO brake pedals, they have an Allen wrench so that you can tighten this up completely tight. If you leave this in here, you'll be able to see it takes up a tremendous amount of room, so all of a sudden you will have a whole bunch of rear brake and not a lot of front brake, or vice versa, depending on how your master cylinders are hooked up. This is a real good tuning tool, like I said, for the driver. What I recommend is I actually take and tell the customers, I go all the way to the rear, because we've had the question, where do you start? I go all the way to the rear and about 4 to 5 turns off the rear. The reason I go that far off the rear is, say for example, the car is tight, in a real tight situation. If we started too much to the rear, we'd have no more adjustment to the rear to be able to have your help the driver get the car freer in a real tight situation. So I think it's very important in that situation. When you do it, you want to make sure that how this actually works is when you're all the way to the rear, you should have 100 pounds more on your brake gauges to the rear than you do to the front. When you're all the way to the front, you should have 100 pounds more on the front gauge than you do your rear gauges. I recommend brake gauges. Number one, it shows you the amount of pressure that you're getting on the cylinders. Now, it's not something that you're going to actually watch. In this display, we have them mounted up here. When we mount them in the car, we actually mount them right to the master cylinder so that when you're sitting there like on a restart or whatever, you can check to see where you're actually at, or you can just go by rounds. And that's another thing. On a restart, I always tell customers to make sure you put 2 to 3 rounds of rear brake back in it, because remember, for those of you who are running a modified, if you go around 6-7 laps on the yellow, you're cooling the front tires off. Your back tires are enclosed, and usually the header heat's keeping the rear tires somewhat warm, but the front tires cool off. If you don't put more rear brake in there, you're going to find out that all of a sudden the brakes cool down, the tires cool down on the front, the car's going to go in and it could pick up a little bit of a push. So it's much easier for you to go in, get on the brakes, and the car be just a twitch loose than it would be if you were to be a little bit tight. And then if you're on the inside, you would move up the track into somebody. If you're on the outside, you're going to move up the track. Somebody's going to get underneath you. So always keep that in mind. Once again, I usually 4 to 5 turns off the rears where I start. On a restart, always turn a couple turns to the rear so that the car's ready to go when you're ready for it to go. And of course, keep in mind not only just the brakes, but keep the brakes warm, keep the tires warm on a restart by swerving the tires. Once again, like I said, I recommend brake gauges. It's another gauge you can have in the car that gives you some more data that you can tell where your brakes are. Now you can see I've got quite a bit of pedal on this, but I've got a lot of force to get this thing to move, and I'm right there in the middle right now. The next thing we're going to talk about is trail braking. Well, first of all, what is trail braking and why would we use it? Well, trail braking, what it is you're actually learning to brake the car before you get off the throttle. So in other words, you're sitting here, you're coming out of turn 4, you're accelerating, going down into turn 1. Now, what we want to do is we want to slow the motor down, and especially right when the motor hits the chip, we want to start applying brake pressure so that we can have a little bit of brake pressure on the car to keep the car up on the bars, keep the car loaded on the rear suspension. So then we're just hitting our full throttle and we're already on the brakes. Now we back off the throttle, we're still on the brakes. Now we back off the brakes and we easily get back on the throttle. And this is very worthwhile on a real dry, slick racetrack. The thing that's to note is it's a constant motion on the brakes, off the throttle. On the throttle, off the brakes. But keep that a smooth motion, because what we want to accomplish here is not breaking the tires loose and keeping our suspension loaded. Many times you'll see guys that'll slam on the throttle, they're up off the brakes, they jump out of the throttle, they slam down on the brakes, now all of a sudden the car falls, then it gets back up, so then it gets free, and the car's not real good handling when you're doing that slamming effect. Now, on a racetrack that's heavy, more than likely you won't need to use the brakes as much. You might have to tap the brakes a little bit to set the car. But on a real dry, slick racetrack, you're going to want to learn, and many guys say, you know, we just can't learn that trail braking. Well, I can't express the fact how important that is. Once again, you're on the throttle. Before you even get completely all the way on the throttle, you're starting to apply brake pressure and you're braking it down, back up off the throttle, off the brake pedal, nice and smooth, back on the throttle. It's that adage of we've got an egg underneath the throttle pedal and we don't want to break the egg. So nice and easy, keeps the car loaded when you keep it up on the brakes or on the brakes. Very smooth reaction. That's going to get you on a real dry, slick racetrack. That's going to get you more traction than if you're the guy that jumps on the throttle, jumps off the brake, jump on the brake, back off the throttle. That's going to break the tires loose and you're going to have a loss of forward bite. Now, in the examples, we've got a couple videos to show you. In the example, the first driver, he's a brake stabber. And if you watch and you listen to the engine as best you can, you'll hear him on the brakes, on the throttle, on the brakes, on the throttle. Real jerky motion. Now, our next driver, you can see he's much smoother. On the throttle easily, back on the brakes, and really does a pretty good job of trail braking the car. I can't express the fact that this is something that if you don't have a lot of knowledge with, and if you don't do it very well, it's something you need to really work on, because when the races, the big races, the dry slick races, the races that pay money, it's going to get you better position and a better handling car if you know how to work the brakes and the throttle together. Thanks for watching our segment today on how brakes impact handling. Stay tuned for more segments on brakes and other subjects yet to come.